Hello, it's Jen the Liberty Lion, and today I want to talk about just some points in some other videos that I've made, and I wanted to sort of put some of those other points together and do some clarifications, I guess, or show you another bigger picture. So this is probably some things that a lot of people have already been considering, thinking about, know about, are aware of, but I'm just going to read this real quick, this thing I put together. So I had talked a little bit about abortions and how sometimes the law is not always passed for the reasons that we think they are, that sometimes they're passed for other reasons that we're really not on the surface aware of. They pass laws sometimes to get people to do things, to get them to move in a certain direction. And that's not always readily apparent to the people like us when we're just reading the laws. Sometimes the consequences are hidden in the laws. I've talked about this a little bit. And I believe that abortions and anti-abortion law and using the idea of it being against Christian values when Christianity and religion is not supposed to even have a place in government because it creates a prejudice, but they use it to their advantage to get people to accept the laws. So real quick, I've mentioned before that I worked for the government. I was in the military, and I was also a civil servant. Now, there's been people who say, no, you were never a civil servant. You can't prove it, blah, blah, blah. Here's, this is just a copy of the front part. This is my address down here I'm covering up. This is just a copy of the front part of the letter that I received. So this is NA form 13056 revised 1024. This is a copy of my civilian record that I recently received in the mail, and these are all my standard forms, my raises. I ended with a GS11 step 2 rating. It's got a copy of my resumes. It's got, you know, I can't show you all of it. It's got private information, my address, social security number, birthday, you know, things like that. But yeah, so this is just, you know, the front copy of it. This is their cover letter. I don't have a problem showing this to you. They sent it to me 12/10/2024. That's my name right there. That's my name down here. The last place I worked was Fort Leavenworth, Department of the Army. Okay. So, this has just got some stuff in it, just some points that I wanted to make. This by no means includes all information that can be derived from sort of the things that I put in here. There's a lot of things that encompass all this. I'm trying to sort of just make some points to get people to think about things in maybe a little bit of a different way. Okay, so there's a way for politicians to move people into a direction. Now, there's many ways, but I'm just talking about a few ways in here. So consequences of an act will get people to do something without them being fully aware of the reasons for the true purpose behind the congressional acts. Laws or policies, as we know, give advantage to some over others. Like politicians who understand the advantage or disadvantage of a bill or an act, its positive or negative consequences of the act before the act is passed, and there may be no proof of insider trading or insider acts. Sometimes they act before the act is even written, knowing what it is about to be done. So corporations, politicians, they know what they're about to do, and they know what the consequences are going to be after they pass the act. So that's what I'm saying here, that To have insider trading, you have to act after the act is passed, but have some sort of insider knowledge, and then act before the act is passed so that insider trading can be proven. But what if they act before the act is passed? So what if they buy into a corporation, some stocks of a corporation before the act is even passed, and then they say, well, it wasn't insider trading because the act wasn't passed yet. I didn't know it was going to be passed. And so I was just acting on a hunch, right? So they already know what's going to be passed or what's not going to be passed before it's passed. I mean, they can probably tell to at least a certain degree. So tools can be used to get people to act a certain way. The same tools can be used to get people to agree with an act passed by Congress. Tools can be anything that get people to move in a desired direction, to get people to do a thing. Tools are, for one part, taking advantage of people's state of mind. Putting people in a state of fear can get them to do certain things, making them angry, making them happy, giving them a reason to be happy. Our beliefs are used to change things. Our beliefs are also a tool, like our religious beliefs or our belief in freedom. For example, Eisenhower wrote some of his speeches intentionally to lack an emotional appeal. He wanted to get people to think about things logically instead of moving them emotionally. He wanted to be truthful, straightforward, and logical. At least that's my opinion of his speeches. He did not want to use emotions, and he specifically said that to his speech writers, that he didn't want to create an emotional appeal in some of his speeches. He just wanted to be absolutely truthful. But most politicians are not like Eisenhower, or not like Eisenhower was. Most politicians are really great at motivating people through their emotions and beliefs. Things used against us, our beliefs, for example, separating us into groups like stereotypes, religions, sexes, people who use reason and logic, and those who are more emotional decision makers. When it comes to getting people to act in certain ways, acts by Congress are passed, and those acts have consequences. Acts may be those that move people into purchasing new cars, such as increasing the price of fuel. People purchase new products like smaller vehicles, keep the market going, may create at least temporarily new jobs, import or export more products, and so on. Increasing the prices of large vehicles, increasing fuel prices, increasing the cost of insurance for larger vehicles, all create a need for purchasing small, more efficient vehicles. Consequences would be the run to purchase smaller vehicles, which might be one of the true intentions of passing such acts. Other intentions of acts would be creation of jobs to supply buyers with the smaller vehicles, increase trade with foreign countries, such as those who make smaller vehicles, Toyota, Mazda, Honda, so on. Perhaps people would purchase more motorcycles. There are other ways for politicians to move people into or out of markets. Not always are those consequences or intentions readily apparent to the regular person. They simply fill it in their pocketbook and perform an act to decrease the negative financial impact. But what about abortion? Politicians may claim religion or religious values, but those again are just tools. Consequences of anti-abortion laws are to get people to have more children. Having more children puts a strain on people's finances, which they cannot afford to have any extra financial strain. So people who already are in a financial negative situation might not want to have children. And so then if the wife becomes pregnant, it's going to be harder for her or impossible for her to have an abortion. So then they would have to have a child, which puts a further financial strain on the family. It can place some women in a negative medical situation when their when they medically should not be having children. This creates a consequence of being dependent on medicine, health insurance, and so on. Another financial strain upon the family, which with results of being dependent upon a corporate job, health insurance, the government's welfare system, medicine, so on and so forth. Another result of anti-abortion laws are that we end up having more children. More children increases the population of a nation. Increasing the population of a nation is one of the goals of governments. Consequences of increasing the population of a nation might be more people dependent upon government for welfare, more loans or debt, more payments to health insurance, more purchase of lands, more voters tipping the scales of the majority for majority roles. How does it tip the scales? More children in the school system to indoctrinate, more fighting for resources, which creates a larger poor class of people since resources are limited, more people fighting for corporate jobs, more unemployed since corporate jobs are limited, more people going to and paying for colleges and universities, resulting in more indoctrination, more money to the universities, more people going into the military to get the GI Bill to pay for college. With more people fighting for jobs, corporations can offer lower pay since they can hire the person who will accept the lower offers. The consequences go on and on. So you can imagine how many consequences there are just to passing some bill or some act by Congress, which may seem on the surface just to do what it says it does, but then there are ripple effects to these things. In an old interview several years back, a representative speaking for Russia said something to the effect that we have done everything the United States or United Nations has asked us to do. We altered our form of government from a Soviet socialist republic to a democratic republic. We increased our populations, and he went on. Increasing populations is important for several reasons. One of the most important I'll talk to you about in a few minutes. If you've been watching my channel, I explain how the United States is not an independent nation. The states make a nation, and the states are the United States of America. And they created a corporation or agency or military, what have you, called the United States. They funded permanently the things in the Constitution. However, the states have gone beyond that, allowing their agency to create a national bank and fake money called legal tender, which legal tender I explain in my videos means voluntary relationship or voluntary contract. I explain that the United States has, to some extent, created a monetary system that allows it to be more independent, which it was never intended to be. Now we're talking about United States versus United States of America. The United States of America is not free, sovereign, and independent. All the states that make the United States of America are each individually free, sovereign, and independent. The states got together and called themselves the United States of America, and they created an agency, which I say is a military agency, a stratocracy, and that stratocracy is called the United States. So we're talking about the United States not being free, sovereign, and independent, but the United States of America being free, sovereign, and independent. But for the agency to become independent or try to become independent, it's created a national bank and created a monetary system. So that's where I'm getting at here. So this is number 30. I'll read that again. I explain that the United States, to some extent, created a monetary system that allows it to be more independent, which it was never intended to be. It was not supposed to have a means of supplying itself with its own money because it would be independent outside of, or act independent outside of, the thing that created it, the states. So the United States is an agency that works for the states, but it's trying to become its own thing. It's trying to be its own master. When it's not a master, it is a servant. It's not the owner of all the land, it's a tenant on the land, okay? It's not a master, it's a servant or a sort of a slave, it's a servant. It's not a owner or landlord, it's the tenant. So the Federal Reserve Bank is part of that system that the United States allowed, the United States of America allowed, to create a power that the government was never supposed to have. So in order for the United States to do it, the United States of America has had to allow it to do it. So it's like the states have become detached from that anchor that keeps it tethered to the sovereignty of the people, and it's cut the cord and just gone off on its own. And that's a problem. And so when it's created this system that allows it to untether itself from the people, it's become basically tyrannical and independent, and have unconstitutionally and unlawfully created its own authority. It's become its own authority instead of answering to the people. This power of creating its own wealth allows government to act without any restraint, without the people of the states, us, not necessarily our legislators. This power of the bank allows for debt and loans the United States has to and had to ask the people of the state for land to build military posts, most essential function. But when it created a system of debt and loans for land, it created a system where the government could give loans to people to buy land, destroy the economy either on a small scale or large one, like the Great Depression. Some people have said that the Great Depression was actually a creation of the government when it did certain things, which we have been lied to about, and then take lands and homes and property away from people when they default on their loans. This is a way for government to take things it was never intended to have control over. This allows the federal government to take lands from the states, since they have created a banking system where, as far as I know, all banks have to register with the federal government, which then goes through the Federal Reserve Bank. And all corporations register through the state of, okay, and the state of is part of the federal government. And so when if I go and register a business with the state of whatever, it's actually being registered with the federal government, and I'm being registered as a state and a federal taxpayer if there's a state tax, but a federal taxpayer nonetheless. So in a republic, in the state republics, we weren't required to do that. We weren't required to register our personal businesses, our private businesses, with the federal government, because we were not federal taxpayers. The state was the federal taxpayer. Okay, so then when they created the system, not just with the banks, but also corporations and businesses, when they have to register through the state of. So if you're doing business with the federal government, then yeah, you would have to register through the state of, because you're in the state and you're working with the federal government. But if you're not working with the federal government and you're just supplying goods and services to regular people, you know, in your neighborhood or your town or whatever, then why should you be a federal taxpayer? You're not part of that. Okay, so you cannot open a private bank without getting the routing number and such from the federal government. I've tried, I've looked it up. You cannot open any sort of fake money bank system using government money to hold privately in a bank where you can give loans and such through a bank without asking permission from the federal government. You can keep cash in a safe and perform transactions that way, but not as an actual bank where you do things electronically. I understand there's a commercial aspect to all of this, but calling something private or commercial does not alter the way in which it has to be done through a Republican form of government. So larger populations of people means more purchasing property, buying homes, building homes, and a financial decline, losing it all, which then becomes property of banks. And all these banks are attached to the Federal Reserve Bank. Are you aware that many people in politics, politicians, and those who have made money building large corporations have trust, and these trusts have expiration dates, and upon expiring, the trust tax laws are altered for a short period of time so the trust can be renewed under tax laws more favorable to the wealthy or the rich. Those who have, and this is left and right, it doesn't matter. Democrat, Republic, Independent, they all do it. Those who have trust always win and never lose, so to speak. Those who do not almost always lose and never win. So the name of the game, the name of winning the game is to have a trust. By this, I mean those with trust are perpetually wealthy and don't lose wealth and end up always with money to buy more, create more wealth, buy more, create more wealth, buy more, create more wealth, so on and so forth. Those who have no trust, for the most part, never win. They lose every time the market drops or crashes. They lose every time a corporation goes bankrupt. They always face the possibility of layoff or getting fired. Anything they have accumulated, they can lose with foreclosures, having to sell their land and anything they have built. Trusts are for the most part perpetual and renewed. Let's face it, the wealthy own the government, the politicians, and the politicians are the wealthy also. Some of them having hundreds of millions of dollars of worth, probably most of which are in trust, giving them all the advantages that wealth brings. The wealthy own everything, and the wealthy keep their wealth in trust, and trust wealth is kept in bank accounts. A bank goes bust, and even the wealthy can lose everything, but even if a bank goes out of business, we still have the Federal Reserve, which will never go out of business and eventually own everything, given the right circumstances. That means if we don't do something about it, and the government doesn't do something about it, and we don't go back to gold and silver, then these wealthy people will just stay wealthy. We can say, well, one person loses and another person just gets a loan for that same property and the bank no longer owns it. But think about this. The banks control the economy. All they have to do is release more or less money. You might say that that's up to government. But as I said, government is run by the wealthy. The wealthy can control the people through government. When the people start uprising, they just cheapen the money or make it less available, whichever suits their needs, and they can easily destroy the economy. Banks do not care if the poor win or lose. They're not benevolent. This just goes round and round and round. The wealthy are the politicians, and for the most part are attractive to those greedy people who seek power and wealth. They seek control. I said a word in there. I'm not sure what the word's supposed to be. Anyway, this is just another way of looking at things. We're separated into classes, into beliefs, into men against women, women against men, into groups of these people or those people, but it's all to keep us under control. It's all to keep the wealthy and the poor. It's all to keep the rich rich and the poor poor, and eventually for government or the wealthy through government and banks and fake money and fake laws to keep them in control, to keep the wealthy in control. You think of wealth, you think welfare is to help people. It's not. It just makes you a dependent. You think government is to maintain harmony of the people. It doesn't. You think money is real. It is not. You don't own it, and you don't really own anything you purchase with it. The only thing a person truly owns is their labor, and today that is sold to corporations for legal tender or a voluntary relationship with banks and government. You think anti-abortion laws are based on Christian values. They are and they are not. Maybe to you they are, but to the people making the laws they are not. They have consequences other than what comes to mind immediately. They have consequences that go beyond most people's immediate thoughts. That is more debt, more debt, more debt. Debt is what keeps things going in this country. It keeps banks and business. It keeps the wealth flowing, mostly in one direction. It keeps government in control, and it keeps the wealthy, and it keeps the wealthy controlling government. Okay, so like, share, and subscribe. And I promised a video on fraud, or not fraud, but deception, manipulation, and government, and within people and politics and the military. And that'll be the next video. If you haven't been watching the Karen Read trial on the murder of John O'Keefe, I'm gonna do a video on that. There's lots out there on YouTube if you want to watch it. This is about a town in Massachusetts where the police, basically the entire police department, all the way up to the Boston Police Commissioner, is involved in framing an innocent woman for the murder of her boyfriend, who was a police officer, that was probably carried out actually by another group of police officers. So that's the Karen Read trial on the murder of John O'Keefe, a police officer, and it's all over YouTube. That's what I've been doing. I've been keeping track of that and watching. It's really interesting, a lot of interesting stuff. Basically, the prosecution has no evidence, but they've brought a bunch of stuff in, junk really, that makes it look like there's evidence, but when the defense, Karen Read's defense, tears it down, there's really no evidence to anything the prosecution is saying. And then the prosecution, the district attorney, has a relationship with the judge, and the judge was asked to recuse herself, and she refused. And if you watch some of these videos out there, especially the live ones, you can really see a lot going on between the judge and the prosecution, where it does appear to a lot of people that there's a relationship between them. So that's just another thing we're going to have to deal with if we want to try to get freedom back for our country. So with that, like, share, subscribe, and I'm trying to do more videos, but I've been watching this Karen Read thing. It's really fascinating to me. If you haven't seen it, go out and watch it, and I'll see you in the next video.